You've reached Hotel Pacifico, your five-star destination for BC politicos. Press 4 for room service. Press the star key for your hosts Mike McDonald and Kate Hammer.
Welcome back, guests. Thanks for joining us again for early check-in at Hotel Pacifico. Good to see you, Geoff and Mike.
Good to see you too.
Bright and early.
Bright and early. Mike, I see you've got a fantastic t-shirt on.
I do. I can barely move because the logo is so tight on my chest, my ever-expanding chest. But this t-shirt has been known to be seen around Commercial Drive area. And
yes.
It's been seen at Smitty's and Gibson's, I know, and Yaletown. So many fashionable locations are wearing Hotel Pacifico t-shirts.
Absolutely.
Which you have to take our logo and go to London Drugs to get it. It's not like we sell these things.
We have to get one for Geoff. Geoff, I'm sorry we didn't get you one of these. We need to sort this out. Yeah.
Jeff's never worn a t-shirt in his life.
Or a hoodie. Oh no, I got lots of good t-shirts.
Oh, there you go.
They're just too political for morning radio.
All right, so we'll start the check-in. Let's see. Today, roundup, we've got David Eby in Terrace. We had to do a bit of sleuthing to figure out where he's at today. John Rastad is in Cranbrook. I think he's kicking off campaign for Peter Davis, Kootenay Rockies, I think, candidate there.
Kimberley too, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So is that the first we've seen kind of move out of the lower mainland island area? Maybe?
Yeah, he was in the North Island, but first foray into the interior, I think.
Okay. Sonia Firstno still staying close to home. She's in Victoria Beacon Hill. She's going to announce her plan to address, or the Greens plan to address the toxic drug crisis. So I think that's happening early this morning.
So yeah, she's doing a joint press conference with Lisa Lapointe, the former coroner, who famously fell out with, or maybe the NDP fell out with her 6 months ago or whenever that was, a year ago, when the minister kind of submarined her after her press conference. So this should be interesting. Could be some fireworks there.
Yeah, she's a very strong advocate for non-prescribed safer supply. So if the Greens go down that road, which I think they will, also with her is Leslie McBain, head of Moms Stop the Harm, a very, very powerful group of grassroots activists who've lost loved ones to the opioid crisis. So it'll be an interesting and dynamic one. Certainly be a polar opposite to the position taken by John Rastad.
Yeah, I was going to say, you couldn't go far in either direction as the two parties seem to be going. And interesting dynamic in the campaign. Voters certainly have a choice on that issue.
Yeah, that well, we will talk more about that announcement tomorrow. Today, I do want to move a little bit to talking about the campaign promises that came out yesterday. So I'll start with, I guess we can start with John Rastad, he was in Surrey, I believe, to make his announcement about, he called it the Rastad rebate. This is $3,000, a $3,000 rebate on your housing costs. So it could be rental, it could be your mortgage, right? I think there's a maximum on it, right? Household income up to $250,000.
That's right.
And it's $3.5 billion cost overall. And he's owning, interestingly too, that he's going to make cuts to make this happen. How do we think this landed?
Well, I mean, I think it would normally land favorably. It's a meaningful tax cut. I think they're budgeting $900 million for it. Partly because it would be more expensive were it not for a means test. And there's a significant amount of mortgage interest and rent that people can write off on their taxes. Obviously, his announcement got derailed. And it got derailed, and we can get into that in a second, but it got derailed by the archival footage, the grainy archival footage that was found way back in June.
Yeah, midsummer, I was going to say.
with
so ancient.
With Rustad talking about COVID vaccines. But back to the promise, I mean, that's obviously geared towards, not exclusively, but principally, I think, lower mainland voters feeling the pinch on housing costs. That's why he announced it in Surrey. different than the NDP promised last election. It's bigger because the NDP provided rent relief. Or was that 2017, Geoff? I can't remember.
It started in 2017, but I have a
never
few
really
things to say about
materialized
that.
though.
Until 2020.
Well, this is anyway, go ahead, Mike. I have a few thoughts on this, obviously.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a more robust tax cut, obviously more expensive.
Yeah.
But it also includes homeowners. And, in the States, people can write off their mortgage interest. So it has a touch of that. So, I mean, I think it's going to appeal to people who are, below 250,000 in the condo market. It'll be a plus. Now, the question is, will people hear about it? Now, last night on Global, at 6 o'clock news, most highly rated newscast in British Columbia, I'm told, the Conservatives did get a clean shot on that policy as a news item, and then it went to the vaccine story. So, we'll see how many people end up hearing it.
Well, this is, of course, one of the bones I like to gnaw here, which is whether or not a story in the mainstream media is a story, because this was obviously going to be a centerpiece of the Rust Ag campaign because of its numbers and its theme and so on. But I've searched high and low for an explanation of how it would actually work. The number that was touted was $3,000 per month would be the maximum that someone could receive, and that seems to me to be a staggering sum. People forget there's already a big housing subsidy for homeowners, which is called the homeowner grant. It's one of the most expensive tax concessions in the entire budget, and it's not income tested or anything. Part of the idea behind the renters rebate was to begin to find something for tenants, but it proved something that people had never heard of in BC and didn't really ring any bells, and it was hard to design and kind of implement. Finally, it got done, and I searched high and low for a background or with any specifics about how this might work. There was a 500-word news release, and that was it. So I think there's a lot of questions. It's apparently you'll get to claim up to 5% of eligible expenses, but I'm not sure what eligible expenses are. And so the numbers are flying around, and I wasn't able to find any housing experts who had said anything about it by the close of business last night. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens to this next, whether it catches fire and everybody goes, wow, we really need that, or whether it gets lost in some debates over how it would actually work. It also sounds like a very low number for budget impact, given that every single person who rents or owns in the province would be eligible for something, except, as Mike says, if they make over $250,000. But just in my family circle, we have, 2 daughters who own a condominium. Their collective income is not quite there, but they're very well paid. So this is sweeping that $250,000 is a pretty high level of family income. So lots of people would qualify at some point.
Yeah,
Well,
I can
if
see.
it's,
Go ahead.
I mean, I think if someone's making $150,000 a year at the full build out of this tax credit, they could write off $36,000 in interest or $36,000 in housing costs, and that would drop them to a lower income tax bracket and less tax. I'm presuming that's how it works.
Well, it's all
right,
very speculative,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Can I just talk execution for a minute?
Sure.
Yeah.
Who do you want to execute?
Well, we'll come back to the vaccine thing, but I just I really was again surprised at the lack of substance to the announcement. I mean, it's a massive, complicated announcement, so it needed some extra collateral, and if it was there, it wasn't on the party
Well,
website.
Geoff, I count at least 3 bullet points in the news release. So
It's more detail than we've seen
very
yet.
fussy.
Well, you get another bullet point, Mike. That's a second page, and then you're using more paper. And so, anyway, okay. Enough of that.
I'll count it as undecided.
We're a podcast.
Isn't that helpful for the forestry sector? All right. So agree. There's more detail to come, but I have to say, there's some good legs to this. It's very generous. I mean, I was wondering even when I first heard it, because I know a lot of the reaction to, I mean, it's a different context, but a lot of the reaction to the Greens coming out with the promise, particularly on free transit, was like, we can't afford that. And I wondered if we'd see more of that out of the gate. I don't think we did. But in fairness, I don't know that we've tested this thing yet because it really got trounced. And let's talk about it. It really got trounced by this video that was surfaced of John Rustad saying that oh gosh, that vaccines are actually a means of population control. So-called vaccines are actually a means of population control. And I think really veering into a space that makes it hard for him to shake off, some of the conspiracy theorists relationships that he's seen, particularly within some candidates that he's had to drop. Um, and I would say that dominated the day yesterday. That was probably a pretty effective drop by the NDP. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
It was certainly a big part of the news cycle. And in the context of Rustad not being fully defined as a leader and lots of first impressions being formed, ought to be cause for concern. I mean, I would be very concerned that they didn't seem ready for it, that they didn't seem to have their answers ready to go. It's first rule of opposition research is do it on yourself.
Mhm.
So, that's obviously the NDP are going to go hard on that for the next few days, and I'll be interested to see if we start seeing ads from the NDP on it. Part of me is also saying, well, like, okay, if you're a voter, to what extent is that a disqualification of the Conservatives for being considered as an option for people? Or will affordability and other issues overpower? Will it be a hold your nose while they go gravitate towards issues that have consistently been topping the polls? So not a great development for the Conservatives. I'm not going to lie about it, but it's hard to quantify the impact yet.
It was a smart bomb that hit right on target because there was no interruptions. He wasn't being hectored by anybody. He was sitting there reflectively speaking how John Rustad speaks. And he said, I've been vaccinated 3 times, but I've changed my mind about all the science. I talked to Bonnie Henry, and I think she's out to control the world. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so people who have doubts about science, we're not debating whether the earth is round anymore. It's not, you can have an opinion on it, but it doesn't make you qualified to be premier. So the combined with the earlier one, which I thought deserved more coverage, but was really insider baseball, was his decision, apparently, which no one's followed up on, to invite all of his MLAs to make a pledge to vote their conscience. Means that in all of these issues where people have views that are really outside party politics, mainstream, and outside science, and I'm thinking about reproductive rights or you name it. It could be chemtrails. It could be anything. He's invited all of his MLAs on a podcast to say, well, you can vote any way you want. And in fact, I demand you do. Is not the message that
you think that's unpopular with people, that the free votes?
Yeah.
No, I think I think what's unpopular is the idea that he's going to try to have it both ways. Sure, people love the idea of free votes in principle. That's why I guess it didn't get much more coverage. But he's not creating a discipline caucus. It's very, very different. And he's opening the door to all kinds of objectionable opinions and things that, like his own opinion about vaccines.
That's what the voters send to Victoria.
Yeah, I think there's the prevailing sentiment around wanting electeds who do speak their own minds, and this notion that that people are not feeling like they're represented in capitals, I think is stronger than if you're having a reaction to that that's about the conspiracy theorists, you're already probably not in their camp.
Well, I think on any position where you're going forward and saying, and especially in a tight race, I don't know how many people will be voting with me on a given day. It wasn't just on matters of conscience. It's like what is the Conservative
Geoff,
Party platform?
Like in the British Parliament, there's scads of free votes, and
I know, but we don't normally have them here, Mike.
Well, maybe we should.
Why is Rustad not in a BC Liberal caucus right now? Because he got thrown out for speaking his mind on climate.
Yeah, how'd that work out?
Yeah, no, I know, but it's not going to work out that way every time.
Okay.
Well,
that's why we have so many.
Can we talk about the NDP policy announcement?
I think it's going to be hard for him to convince people that it's not risky to bring in someone who's not going to really control the caucus and is going to allow opinions that were never part of any platform to be part of their politics on the floor.
Okay, we will. We will watch how this develops.
If that's going to be an NDP theme, I feel like they doth protest too much on that.
Well, and we'll see what else the NDP has in their.
Mike, you've never been sympathetic to NDP complaints in the past, so that's
no, I'm not. No, I've been resistant to the iron fist of NDP discipline.
Yes, I'm sure we're going to be talking a fair bit about healthcare this election. That's true of most elections, but a confluence of predictable factors, like our aging population, and unpredictable ones, like a global pandemic, have put unprecedented strain on our healthcare system. And I want to zoom in on a political bellwether community that is facing unique challenges, Kamloops, because they've been hit by a confluence of challenges, including a 51% increase in homelessness, high rates of fatal overdoses, and pressures on the healthcare system overall. This is why TELUS and Ask Wellness Society have partnered to bring the Ask Wellness mobile health clinic powered by TELUS Health to Kamloops and Meredith, with plans to expand to Penticton. The mobile clinic aims to provide primary health care and harm reduction services to people experiencing homelessness in the BC interior, and is expected to support over 4,000 patient visits per year. In BC's diverse geography, these clinics on wheels can help bridge the healthcare gap between urban and rural or remote communities. And they're another example of what it means to be BC's hometown teen.
Okay, talking about that Iron Fist, the Iron Fist is putting out
Not what
planks
I
of a
heard.
healthcare plan. Let's pivot. It's a tight show, gentlemen. So David Eby was in Burnaby, I think, giving out the planks of a healthcare plan yesterday. Things like getting foreign doctors, I think, getting them sort of provisional licenses really quickly, getting a list of countries they can come from and get licenses quickly, expanding the prescribing, the powers basically of pharmacists, bringing in physician's assistants, actually, which I was a bit surprised by. Might be a little more contentious with some of like the nursing union, for example. Anyway, so this was, I think, probably a pretty important announcement for, yeah, go ahead.
Well, he also said
Yeah.
they're going to cut healthcare bureaucracy. And I'm thinking, like, how long have you guys been in power for? 7 years? And now you're going to cut healthcare bureaucracy?
Well, because it's easy to do, right, Mike? You just take out the scissors and you go and you trim.
I see what the NDP are doing here. Eby's got a good shtick. He's like, we're working hard on these issues and we're making progress. And by gosh, and before the other party can get to the problem, and Rustad certainly pointed this problem out, they're showing that they're working on it. And you always get points for identifying the problem and empathizing with it and having something to say about it. But I also think it's like, okay, now we're getting into the 7-year mark of this government, and it's tougher to make those arguments that you're fixing a problem that you've had 7 years to fix. And that goes the same with a whole bunch of things in this campaign. Arguably they are working hard on housing. They certainly have a lot to say about housing, but there's other issues too that maybe they haven't gone so well. So anyways, it's like, yay, the NDP are cracking down on healthcare bureaucracy. Believe it when I see it.
Yeah, but when you get elected into office, not everybody realizes that, at the top level, that fax machines are still the state-of-the-art communications device.
Took them 7 years to figure out they're still using fax machines.
Well, a lot of people out there are still, you'll find that there's groups in healthcare that want to keep doing things the old way, whether it makes sense or not, because that's the way they've always done it. It's similar, and to say that pharmacists are now going to be able to prescribe for certain common remedies is a big earthquake in terms of the absolute control that doctors always had. But I think we're going to hear more about healthcare and more about tangible stuff. I imagine that Terrace is probably a destination because of the new hospital that's just about ready to go there, which was long overdue, a huge contentious thing. And, Mike, you know as well as I do that actually getting things built is often a much longer process than changing a policy. But the voters see it and they like it. And in communities like that, which is exploding because of gas development, it'll be really welcome news. So lots is getting done, and he has to keep pointing to it with whatever way he can. Rustad made a comment that 80% of nurses are administrators. It's another one of those weird factoids the Conservatives are popping up with. And I thought, how could that possibly
be true? He said 40%, I think.
Was it 40? Okay, still a large number.
Yeah.
In any event, there was some made up number. And the thing is that nurses graduate to run the healthcare system. Many hospital administrators are nurses, so they continue to be registered as nurses, but they're not on the floor. I think that's part of what's happening there. We're going to have quite a debate, but the fact that a lot of building is going on, including here in Vancouver, but also Vancouver Island, all over the province for healthcare facilities, is going to be relevant to people. They'll be glad.
All right. So let's move on. We've got our new segment, Milking the Data, brought to you by BC Dairy. Farmers need guaranteed access to water to feed BC. Mike, do you have some fantastic data for us to tuck into
Well,
today?
yeah, today I just want to take a deeper dive on who actually votes in British Columbia. And
Mm,
we look at the top line on these polls that come out, and it assumes, most polls anyways, assume that all age groups are voting at the same rate. And I crunched some data last night from the 2020 election. And, oftentimes when they say, here's the voter turnout rate, they're saying what the percentage of registered voters are that turn out to vote. It's actually, in my opinion, you have to look at the percentage of the general population because a lot of people don't even register to vote. So actually last election, 46% of people voted in the provincial election. Now it was a weird one. It was COVID. It was a bit lower than the previous one because of those issues, but still it's leaving a lot on the table in terms of who's not voting. Now, when you look at who's voting, over half the voters that vote in BC elections are over the age of 55. Now, they're only 42% of the adult population, but they're over half of the voters. So
right.
why do political parties spend more time talking to old people like Geoff and me? It's because we're actually going to vote.
Mhm.
35 to 54s, Kate, I think you're in there somewhere.
Yep.
Um,
And women,
32%
we're
of the
pretty good, right? Good.
well, is
30,
that no?
what?
32% of voters and 32% of the population. So that's right
Yeah,
on
mashed it.
target.
Yeah.
But when you get to
Uh,
young people, those ne'er-do-wells, they make up 26, 18 to 34s make up 26% of the population and 18% of the voters.
yeah.
So, I mean, I think we all instinctively know this, but it is when you start unpacking polling data that comes out during the campaigns and you apply a turnout weight to it. And this, I think, was the fundamental misunderstanding in the 2013 election, was that the BC Liberals were quite strong with the 55 plus, and the NDP were quite strong with the 18 to 34s. The public polls were not showing voter turnout weight, and that made a significant difference in the interpretation of the numbers. The highest group of the kind of 10-year group is 65 to 74-year-olds. Their turnout rate in 2020 was 64%, and 18 to 34s were 29%. So 65 to 74s are more than twice as likely to vote as 18 to 34s.
Mm.
So, that hurts parties like the Greens who probably punch above their weight in the 18 to 34s, but they can't get them out to vote at election day. Now, in this particular election, the NDP are doing quite well at 55 plus, as we've talked about in previous episodes, and it kind of defies natural laws of politics in British
Political
Columbia.
physics. Yeah.
And if they can hold that, then they are going to have a turnout advantage at the polls on election day. Now, there's other things that go into turnout too. You know, how passionate is the base? Is a close race in an election? There's certain multicultural communities that vote at a higher rate or at a lower rate, depending on which one it is. But age to me is the big one. So I'll ask you, Geoff. Why do you think the NDP are doing so well with 55 plus compared to previous elections?
Well, it's just a shot in the dark, but I think it's because older voters have more at stake, and they have more at stake in the sense that they're familiar and have been following because they're more engaged. Some of the stuff that's going on in politics. That's the best argument I can give you. But 18 to 34-year-olds aren't used to voting, and so you see political organizations or parties saying to people, make a plan to vote. Decide you want to vote. If they get somebody's attention in that age group, they're going to say, well, you're here. I know you're concerned about reproductive rights, or I know you're worried about housing, or you're frustrated about X. Make a plan to vote. And then the whole get out the vote effort is attempt to make them execute or encourage them to execute that plan, which is a much easier thing to do with people who've been voting all their lives. So the explanations I received was that younger people aren't used to voting. They didn't register. They've been more mobile. They're not sure what the issues are. They're very distracted. So the goal is to try to connect with them, get them to make a plan to vote. And so that's where I think civil society organizations, like they could be unions, it could be a gun club, it could be a bridge club, anything, can be very important for encouraging people to get out to vote and to play that role. And I think in this election, we may see some new interest groups brought to the table that we haven't seen before. Interest groups is the wrong word, but I think this is going to be a big election about Indigenous rights and title. And so it'll be interesting to see what participation we see from First Nations communities. I think it's going to be an interesting debate about the opioid crisis, which is really about poverty and addiction and lack of housing and a set of issues that don't normally come to the fore. And what we're seeing is that that crisis is being debated on every other front, not that front. It's
Well, I think
can we get people to jail, or can we shut
Yeah.
down their drug dens, that kind of stuff.
Yes, I want to talk to you today about public safety and how our sponsor, FortisBC, works to keep communities safe during wildfire season. Some of the steps they take include application of fire suppression materials and fire blankets around infrastructure, clearing vegetation, and monitoring assets to maintain service for customers in the event sections of the FortisBC energy system are damaged. The employees of FortisBC live and work in the communities that they serve, so they too understand how wildfires impact families, homes, and businesses. Many FortisBC staff involved in the 2023 West Kelowna wildfire response were personally affected, whether they were on an evacuation alert themselves or helping friends and family evacuate safely. As an energy provider, FortisBC is just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to responding to wildfires. Coordinating with emergency officials, BC Wildfire Services, and other local agencies is critical to maintaining the safe and reliable energy British Columbians rely on. On behalf of our sponsor, FortisBC, thank you to all of the crews, firefighters, emergency responders, and community members who work tirelessly to keep our communities safe during a busy wildfire season. FortisBC, energy for a better BC and a better podcast. I think on the 55 plus cohorts, especially the 65 plus, I think the NDP have an advantage on healthcare, which is probably helping them. And there's, I think, the affordability issue is probably less of an issue there because a lot of comfortable seniors anyways are beyond worrying about their housing costs.
Right.
But where I think the conservative opportunity probably is, maybe this is why they're driving it first couple of days, is on crime. And that is an issue where they have an advantage on, and that is an issue that resonates with older people. But it's not the number one issue, though. It's not the number one issue, and they'll have to make it the number one issue, but it's not yet anyways.
Well, a question I have about housing affordability is that you see a very different approach, if I understand Rustad properly. He's saying for those who already have housing, we all have some kind of housing for the most part. I'm going to subsidize you. I'm going to help you out somehow. EB's got a different, is a supply side one. So I'm going to create the opportunity for you to get a house. And I'm not sure which one is going to resonate because the house building is going to take time. And Rustad's saying, I'm going to blow away all that stuff that EB did about building housing. That's not what I want to do.
And he's also going to do away with Bill 44, where the provincial government comes in and tells municipalities what to do.
Exactly.
And build density. Yeah.
So that's
That's
if you're
a very
worried about
clear
what's going to
choice.
happen in
If
your
you-
neighborhood.
That's the kind of thing where I'm really surprised by this demographic shift. I would have thought the older voters would be way more like in that rip up the bill 44
Maybe they haven't heard that.
realized yet. Yeah. I think that's very likely, actually.
Very few people wake up in the morning and say, I want to get out to a public hearing about a housing matter today. And the older you get, the lower that number becomes. So, I think people are thinking, okay, I'm at a certain age here. This whole housing supply thing's important. I hope it gets solved, but I'm going to be dead before it is. People are taking care of what they've got. But I'm making this up as I go along. I'm not really sure. And I think it is, as Mike says, though, going to be a critical part of the election outcome.
Yeah, well, and I'm keen to see, I think, we're still in this space where voter awareness of what's going on is so low, and I'm keen to see how some of this stuff ages, and in particular, I think the promise, just the Rustad rebate, I'd be interested to see how much that sticks around, and he gets to keep giving that air. All right, so are we needing to do anything before we move to the Espresso Bar on?
I need a double shot right now. Kate.
Okay, let's go straight to the Espresso Bar.
I'll start off. Actually, I think the Conservatives need a double shot of espresso today on a couple counts. One is I think they got punched in the face yesterday, and I think they need to punch the NDP in the face in the days ahead and get the NDP on the defensive. You don't want to be on the defensive for, more than one day, and especially in the first week election campaign where impressions are being formed. So I think this is the day where they got to seize back the agenda. Now, they're in Cranbrook today and Kimberley, and then they also noted that I think on Thursday they're in Prince George. I don't know where they're doing on Wednesday, but if it's 3 straight days in the interior after you've been punched in the face, where you're not going to have direct access to the media as much, I'd be concerned about that. So I'll be interested to see how today plays out. But, the Conservatives, I don't want to read too much into the attacks. I mean, we'll see how many people do hear it and are seized by the vaccine thing. But I've felt going into this campaign that the first 7 to 10 days are going to be really important about how people evaluate John Rustad and whether they believe he's ready for prime time and how strongly they feel about time for change. And things are teetering. And I think Conservatives got to get out there and for their sake, make it happen. And I'm not sure how that's going to play out.
Yeah, I would raise my double shot to opposition researchers, but you'll recall this is going to be a big deal in this campaign. When Kevin Falcon's crew were getting ready to fold, the first document they passed over as proof of according to the anecdotes anyway, proof of their willingness to merge with the Conservatives was to hand over their opposition research. So that was a very big book, apparently, quite a thick binder, and it's already been in Rustad's hands for at least a month now. So to be caught flat-footed the way he was is a tribute partly to the work done by the NDP opposition research team, which is looking for this, but also, I think, as Mike says, a sign that the Conservatives had spent months with Rustad on podcasts, producing hours of this stuff, where he's thinking out loud, and he's not, I don't mean this in a nasty way, he's not a particularly charismatic or compelling thinker. So,
the question is how many people care, right? Like how many people actually care about?
Well, I don't think you can win the election on opposition research, but it certainly is a problem if you're losing on that front.
Yeah. And I think I was listening to that clip yesterday, wondering how much, what else there is even on some of the candidates, that it would be easier to link that directly to him and shape him based on what the candidates look like. Now that he's come out with that kind of, that more fringe position. I mean, someone on Twitter, I think it was Jazz Johal, was pointing out Bonnie Henry is more popular than any politician. Right, and more trusted, and more well known, and
you're fired,
and you're fired. It's careful. Okay, well, I'm gonna raise what I think is maybe a matcha latte or something here, because it relates to this. Because I was just actually, when I was looking through Twitter this morning, I was reminded of a tweet from just a couple days ago, actually, from Frances Bula, who was saying how she talked to a politician who's knocking on the doors, who said something along the lines of 50 to 60% of voters they're talking to are not aware there's an election on. And one said he's definitely voting for Kamala Harris. And it's a really good lens to put on some of these discussions we're having, because I think, again, it's great to dive deep and understand this, but there's a lot of the electorate who are going to eventually, who are not acquainted with these discussions yet. And when they do, it's going to be so much more surface level. And that's still where we're at. And will be for a little bit longer, I think. We're just not punching through with the electorate yet. They're not aware it's happening. They're not waking up at early morning to don their T-shirts, dance with a cactus, and track the day's events. So hopefully they'll join us soon. All right. That is episode 2 of our Election Day podcast at Hotel Pacifico. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Talus, and our sponsors, Fortis BC and BC Dairy. We will see you tomorrow, guests. BC, you can never leave.
Checkout time at Hotel Pacifico. We hope you enjoyed your stay.